So this morning we have the real gift of making space and time to hear from each other. Um, and Roland is going to kick us off with a tale of his journey through Australia from mid-July to mid-August. I've been really looking forward to hearing about this trip. So exciting that we can do that this morning. As he's sharing, maybe think about if you have any questions for him, because we'll make some space for those after he's finished. And another thought, just to check in with yourself about whether you might actually have a story or a snapshot that you would like to share about the ways that God has shown up in your life in either giving or receiving love. So there'll be an opportunity for that. And if no one at that time would like to share, we will move into some small groups. And for the people on Zoom, you are also welcome to share if you have something you'd like to share, but please pop a note in the chat and we will make space for you to do that when it's appropriate. So yeah, Roland.
Thank you, Kate. And also, thank you to Gordy for making this happen. I think we've been trying to do this for a while, and we finally figured a date that makes sense. By and large, I just feel very, very incredibly thankful and blessed to have this adventure and to share this adventure with you. But before I kind of get caught in my head, I just want to take a moment just to thank my wife for this very generous gift. Because while I'm doing this, that means I'm not doing other things, and it's not lost on me, and I just am so thankful. So, welcome. My name is Roland, by the way. So here's Australia. For 5 weeks, I was able to navigate from Perth, just down the Western Australia, kind of hug the coast, and then go along the plains here, and then find myself in Adelaide. So that was there's my bike, there's my worldly possessions. This is a bit of a rough skeleton of where I plan to stay, how long it's gonna take, where I was going to stay. So I was looking at just under 4,000 kilometers in about 33 days. So it was a little bit of an ambitious, kind of pace. But it's like, that's pretty manageable. It doesn't take into account any kind of mechanical or health or weather and things like that. But along the way, I had a lot of places that were arranged so I could stay at. And that was a real gift. So there's going to be lots and lots of scenery, because in Australia during this time it was winter, which means that it was shorter days, but everything was very, very green, which surprised me. If you have any questions along, please feel free, because it's going to be quite informal. But I was really blown away. My initial impressions of what I experienced in Australia thus far, because I've been there a number of times, was vastly different than what I experienced this time around. So. It is a little bit humorous because by and large there's some wonderful scenery and that was on offer, but more importantly, this was a real reminder that we live in a very big, beautiful world, but also that there's just lots and lots of good people doing good and wanting to do good for others. And the amount of times that I was received wholeheartedly and people were just supportive and kind was outstanding. So every once in a while you'll come across a tree that's like this, and you're like, that's a little bit different. That is a symbol for farmers for looking at mental health, and it's "Are you okay?" So this is just a nice little symbolic gesture, just to ask other farmers, because it is a very rural and isolated space, just to look at mental health and trying to address some of the stigma around that. So there's some caves that I didn't know about. I had to explore some of them. Again, nice little dip into the water. But this is one of the things that really kind of excited me, was I didn't realize how many giant trees there were in this part of Australia. And how much they just give me life. I just feel like, because in a moment we're going to move away from these trees where it's going to be very, very flat and exposed. Hi.
On these roads, it's very, no one around on the road. But if you do a trip like this where there's nobody
Yes.
on roads and scenery or something.
By and large, with the occasional audiobook running, yeah, it was breathtaking. And that some of that was by nature because I'd chosen to take on some routes that were not major highways. If you want to go to Perth Adelaide, there's a more direct way. Most people don't kind of hug the coast, but yeah, it was very, very scenic. And a lot of times, particularly in the mornings and in the evenings, there was a lot of kangaroos, wild kangaroos running alongside me, and which is cool, except they're trying to get away from me, and there's a fence running parallel, and they yeah, that's very cool. Question in the back, Mark? What's that? They're trying. They're trying their best. I don't know. I have slept where I've heard kangaroos, and it's a different like sound because it's a thump 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 because you'll see. And one of the nice things is that the people that I met to be received with such hard enthusiasm, to want to support me and give me some advice was just exceptional. I ended up doing lots of sort of pretzels. I had a bit of a map in my head of where I wanted to go, but by and large it was a fuller experience because there was one section that had a forest fire. It wasn't all that great, so I took a detour and was able to experience this little quaint town of 4 houses that had kangaroos and emus just randomly walking the streets. You'll see them in a moment where it was just like, and they would eat right out of your hand. You're just like, this is really cool. If you can see, just for reference point, here, this is the bicycle. And so you just feel like you're in a different time. You feel like there should be dinosaurs coming around these giant eucalyptus trees. And it was really surprising. I was like, wow, Australia doesn't have these big trees. So here's that little town I was talking about. They're just randomly walking around. Just, they're pretty acclimatized to people. This is the Gloucester tree. This was out of bounds because one of the spikes had fallen out, but it's a fire. Originally, it was a fire tower, and then you can take these things all the way to the very top where there's a viewing platform. But again, it speaks to just you're in sort of national forest where there's a lot of. This is another canopy walk. So this goes about 40 meters above the ground, and there you go. And it just scale, and you just get a sense that this is kind of special. There's kind of like a whole new ecosystem going on up here. What this doesn't capture is how much sway there is up when you're up there. You're like, whoa, this is a little bit. There's a little bit of give and take here. Yeah, this is it's quite exciting. And a lot of these trees and plants have kind of natural affinity for fire. Some of them won't actually pollinate or they won't germinate until there is fire. So you can see some of the clouds. The days were pretty short. I think that during this time, I think some of the thinking in my head about there is a lot of pleasure in a lot of pain, and there was a lot of discomfort. There was a long stretches where it was just a lot of time sitting in a saddle, getting your kind of butt bones ready. Your legs are kind of working for 6 to 8 hours a day. Lonely stretches, a lot of wind and cold. But within that, recalibration, you kind of, when you're experiencing kindness or a roof or a cup of coffee or a tea or a bed, it has a way of humbling you just to really fully appreciate it. It's just like, wow, this is a really nice gift that people are giving you. And people want to do these nice things. This is an example of a farm that works on the honor system. And I wasn't expecting to stay here, but it just came down in absolute buckets, and I was the only one in this entire campground. And again, it's just like, wow, this is really cool. This is something that I didn't know that was on offer. And there was this whole kind of kitchen area, a little login book, and it was just me the entire night, which is amazing and lonely. So. No. Well, just, I think I would approach it maybe at the end, but I think early on, if I took too many liberties, it would be too hard to kind of fill in those. I think I've kind of worked that out. It would be about 120 kilometers a day on average. And that's pretty achievable if you start early enough and you kind of break them down throughout the day. And many times that I stayed with people that had been arranged and not, they were disappointed that I could only stay for the one night. The question in the back? Yes? No, by and large, very, very flat, which is appreciated, but later on, you're also very, very exposed and not a fan of that because it's unrelenting. The wind just hammers you all day and most of the time I did the research where it was agreeable, but when you're preparing meals or trying to sleep in a tent and you get, this constant wind smacking against the head, sleep is really important, and especially when you're asking your body to do some things, and the wind was really, really hard. So I would trade hills for wind any day. This is a typical meal. Blendle, you know what this is like? It's a one pot wonder. Yeah, there you go. A lot of farming, a lot of canola being grown in that area, a lot of connections to Canada and the prairie parts. Now it's getting into the Nullarbor Plains. The Nullarbor actually means an Aboriginal place where no trees grow. And if you see a map where the road goes or the highway and the coast, you think, oh, you're right on the ocean the entire time. Not true. You're about maybe 12 to 20K away. So it's just, we're getting there, but it's just incredibly barren. Painted, yeah. And the nice thing is, I think, it was as much as it was life-giving as meeting new people. I met a chef, made a stay with someone who's working at the national park. I was able to meet with pathologists and university professors and just lots of different walks of life and lifestyles and correctional officers, and just to do life with them for a small period of time. So this is, I'll go back one. There's hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of just nothing, and then you get to these one rest areas, and just even having a picnic table is just something that you can rest and sit. Occasionally there might be a three-walled structure where you can kind of escape some of the rain as well, but this is a bonus because a lot of the sections there's just a pull-out and that's it. So. So this is just the tent here, right on cue. Yeah, very, very basic. I promised myself that I was going to retire this tent, and it's still hanging around our place. So it's getting pretty tired. Everything breaks. So this tent is no different. Where it's not waterproof anymore. I had a pedal that was kind of a little bit wonky, and I was like, "Oh, is it going to make it? Is it going to make it?" And it made it, but it was still kind of jingle jangly. At night it would get down to about 2-3 degrees, and then in the mid-afternoon it would get up to about 14 to 16. So it's pretty comfortable. The days are really short. There's a couple of days where I wake up at 4 in the morning and start then. This is the Nullarbor Plains, where it also doubles as an emergency landing strip for doctors. And again, this is just straight as an arrow. Thank goodness for the occasional audiobooks. And people would stop and ask you if you need any water or needed help. So every about 200 kilometers, there is a gas station or what's called a roadhouse. They're a little bit dear to stay at. But one of the nice pieces of information I got from a local was to mail myself food and water. Because for a liter and a half of water, you're looking at about $7. So you can't, they have to get everything brought in. There's no actual water in these areas, as well as electricity has to be done by generator. So Like that was a scrumptious meal, but that was about $28. So everything's a little bit more, but you're not going to not stop there. There was a few, like there was a couple days here of real soul searching. I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm accustomed to kind of averaging 18 to 20 kilometers an hour, and I'm doing 6 or 7. I'm just getting slammed from a diagonal, and it was just really hard and unforgiving. And yeah, I had a terrible sleep, and then sure enough, the next day the sun's out, it stopped raining, and I have wind behind me, and I'm maintaining a 40-kilometer-hour. I'm like amazeballs, like this. I'm doing 210, 220 kilometers a day. Like you feel more successful. Yeah. I think for me personally, like I like to see what I can do physically. I think that's part of it. I think, yeah, it's a significant part. I think that depriving yourself of certain comforts, that when you do receive those comforts, whether it's a cup of tea or even a picnic bench, you're kind of humbled, and you're like, wow, I think that we're lost on this, living in our present state, where we have all the things that we really need and want and more, where I'm choosing to suffer a little bit or significantly. I mean, I got no one to complain to, because I'm choosing to do this how I do this, where you could do it a lot easier and a lot more, well, a little bit easier. But I think that it's a good question that I've asked myself this, where it's like, well, why am I doing this? And I'm like, I think I'm okay in the head. Question in the back? No, I didn't have anything of that nature. This area, that Western Australia, was cut off from the rest of Australia for about 2-3 years. So a lot of these places that you went through were pretty tired, and it was really sad. And a lot of times I was the first international person in those parts for at least 2-3 years, and so I think people were, especially kind of excited to see me, even though I think I'm okay, but like they had been deprived. I'm still reflecting on, like, yeah, I think there is a certain amount of pleasure in that discomfort, where you're kind of like, and it feels good to set yourself goals and achieve them, whether it's daily and during this stretch, I think just having the reference and the contrast to having like just a really miserable day or 3, to when you have, a spell where it's like, this is good. Like you've got some tailwinds that are just exceptional. You just feel like you're flying. Like I had planned to do this whole section about 1,200K in about 10 days, and I ended up doing it in 8, just because there's nothing to stop for, and I kind of thinking, well, if the elements are favorable, we're gonna ride this as long as and as hard as I can, and that meant some really big days, but it also meant that by the time I got through that plain section, I had the gift of so much time, where I could take a couple days in certain places, particularly around Adelaide. Yeah, Mark? Yeah. I mean, I remember in previous trips where I used to be able to sleep on a foamy, one of those blue foamies. Now I think I had a blue foamy and a thermarest, and then I ended up finding another little foamy just because my hips were getting a little bit sore. And so it's amazing all the random bits you'll find on the side of the road, but that was one of the things that was helpful. This is also home to, I was speaking about the roadhouses. This is also home to the world's longest golf courses. So every roadhouse, there's a golfing tee off. And I don't know if actually people do this, or once upon a time they used to do this, but if you have a set of golf clubs, you can golf it. I think there's about 12 holes, and it spans over 1,400 kilometers. And so, like, once upon a time, there used to be a lot more traffic going across, and so I just thought that was kind of a nice, curious thing. There's a little story here. So this is about 12 kilometers off the major highway, and again, the wind was coming one way, so I decided to park my bike and hitchhike, and I think I confused some tourists or some tourists that were elderly, because I was cycle with a vest on to just increase my visibility, and I think they thought I worked at this park, and so it took a while to figure out, like, to explain to them what I was doing and why, and eventually they brought me to this viewing place, which is exceptional. You'll see in a second, where I don't know if you can see it well here, but there are about 8 to 12 whales. Okay, and so it's just what do I want to say? It's mesmerizing. It's almost like it's just really relaxing just to watch whales. It's so close, so intimately. And this elderly couple, we ended up having a cup of tea and scones later, and they made sure I got back to my bike. And then not 3 days later, I was wearing the same thing, but they had kind of done the same kind of pace, and they were in the next town wearing different clothes. And as soon as they'd kind of registered who I was, the other lady came up and gave me a big hug, and I was just like, oh, this is just really, really sweet, lovely. Yeah. What's that? Yeah, just one puncture the entire time. This is another, just someone's farm, the last 20 years has opened it up. He's got these, it's called Murphy's Rock. But he reckons that this is the best thing he's ever done in his life. He just opens it up to tourists, and it's again an honor box, and you can pitch your tent there and spend the night there. A nice little picnic area, and he's got to meet people from all around the world because of this little thing, and people want to see this, and it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's just things erode at just different times, so different ways. Yeah. I felt so bad because all I had is $100 bill, and I had $4 in change, and it was $10 suggested donation. So I gave him my $4, and I went to the next kind of gas station. I was like, you know Dan, who's at Murphy's Rock? He's like, oh, I know him. I was like, can you give him $10? He's like, oh yeah, make sure that. So if you're into oysters, this is the place where you can buy like a dozen for about $6 fresh as. I don't mind them, but again, they have oysters everywhere along here, so. It was surprising the number of people that I stayed with would also like the next day would like to cycle with me for a little bit of period of time, but I always felt like they were trying to go harder and push me, or they're trying to show me up, or one person had a electrical bike. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't. I was like, I gotta pace myself here. I did take an extra day here. This is Port Lincoln, where I went and did some great white shark diving. Reluctantly, I didn't see any. I can go back in the next calendar year at half price, but I'm never going to be going back to this place. But it was cool to see, 6-foot tunas and things, and to be in a cage with the scuba gear. But we never saw any of the great whites. So yeah, this is where we punked ourselves. It was cool to see the dents in the cage, formed by these massive animals. So here's another rest stop. Someone's got some sense of humor. Inside the fridge, there's just books. Books. It's a library. Yeah, it's a nice combination of some farm roads. This is the first time I've really relied upon a phone using Google Maps and things like that. Before, it's always been paper on my travels, so this is sort of and that also allowed me to connect with family back home, so I'm grateful for that. This is one of my favorite sections. This is closer to Adelaide, where they have some biking trails, designated biking trails. It just means you can kind of don't have to worry about traffic as much, and again, this follows a rail trail, so the gradient again is going to be very favorable. But you get a sense that it's still very cold and very wet, and this is where a lot of wine is produced. And I was fortunate enough to stay with a chef, and we went on a big tour of the area. Incredibly generous with his time and his resources, and showing off where he lives. This is a quite unique dam. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but there's a platform here, and then there's a platform here, and you can whisper, and the acoustics, the way it works, just the physics is, it's like someone's about 4 feet away from you. It's just crystal clear. So yeah, it's called the whispering wall, so you can talk to your ear, and you can have a conversation all the way on the other side. Very cool. This is the inside of one such vineyard. Looks a little bit fancy. And this is kind of an interesting thing that I took from my brother-in-law, where in some of the grocery stores they have a separate room for cheeses, and so it's contained, and they have, because obviously it smells, so yeah, there you go. I think that's about it. Dan? I would say no. No, I think having an ear for New Zealand, a lot of the accents, but also a lot of the different names or things, it was okay. Yeah, nothing comes to mind, even though I'm wanting to tell you something that's not coming. Yeah. No. Oh, because it was winter, that was my biggest fear, is that was spiders, and like, you know, where that free campsite was, there was some I guess like the equivalent on a, like, it's just a room off of a bed of a truck. You know, it's just like a flat. I'm trying to explain it really well. I guess it gets pulled by trucks, and it's just kind of portable housing. I was gonna spend the night there, but there was this huge spider, and I was like, I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one. Because it's winter, a lot of the snakes are sleeping or hibernating. But you do talk to the locals, and like, so many of them have lost dogs because of spiders and snakes. So I was, you know, there's a couple times where I would ask the host, Mike, there's a spider in the bathroom. It just looks massive. They're like, oh, that's a good one. It's a big one. It eats all the other flies. I'm like, great, thank you for that. I'm feeling a little bit uneasy about this, but it's just because I'm not versed in that sort of thing. So, yeah. We were going to New Zealand anyways, and when we were living in New Zealand, I had cycled from Melbourne to Adelaide, and I've cycled from Melbourne to Sydney, and I've gone from Sydney to Brisbane. So this is just a nice little way of kind of continuing to kind of rope around, and it's just like, it feels good to exercise every day, and by and large live a very simple life. You know, you get up, what am I wearing? What am I eating? What am I doing? It's, you know, I felt bad. Belinda was like, Roland, what's your opinion on these cupboard colors for our kitchen? I'm like, I'm kind of not there in my head, because I don't have a lot of troubles. I mean, the troubles that I have are very simple in terms of decision making, and in terms of just a very, very simple existence for a period of time. And it just feels good to, yeah, again, exercise. And there's no training you can do, because unless you're going for 6 to 8 hours a day, it's really hard to mask or prepare yourself. So, Mark?
Speaking on that, actually, do you find that it was easier or harder as it went along, and why got used to it?
I think as it got physically easier, and I probably got into a rhythm, I think just kind of socially it got harder, because there was long periods of time where it was just like, there wasn't a lot of alone time, which suits me well to a point, and then it doesn't. And you know, the rest stops, you meet people and you have different conversations, but they tend to be very surface and lovely. But I think, like, to have the same motivation, and to say, you know, to mentally prepare yourself, like, I'm going to do 180 kilometers today. This is kind of where I'd like to be. This is where I plan to be. And with that, there was a bit of coordination where people were surprised that I said, well, I'm going to be here on 4 days' time, and I was there. Where typically, I guess, when you're on a bike, there's some plus or minus a day or 3. But yeah, I think mentally it just gets tiring after a while. Socially, it probably got challenging as well. But I did really enjoy a number of audiobooks that kind of helped me sort of shed some of the kilometers and provoke me. sometimes it's really hard to listen to nonfiction books just talking lots of facts because it just feels like someone's talking to you and it's just going through your head. But yeah, a number of really good books. So, yeah.
I have a question too. Can I ask a question, Roland?
Yeah.
The photography, that was just so beautiful. Is photography something that you do?
I think that's just because of taking lots of photos on good days, and when you take lots of photos, you're probably going to get, yeah, I edited it down to, I think about 60 there, but I don't know. It's not something I have a passion or an eye for. Just,
Gotcha.
It's easy when you're in beautiful places and you have time. There's probably not too many pictures where it was raining or super windy or people, but and it was a new phone, so.
Amazing. And how did it feel when you ended this journey? What was the emotion or thought?
I was happy to be reconnecting. I kind of almost wanted to do more because I had so much time at the end. Like during the middle section, I just blasted it, and so I was kind of like in a hurry to slow down, which is a weird kind of feeling where it's like, oh, I can take a couple of days here, and it kind of felt like I limped into Adelaide, where I had 2 days 40 kilometers away, I had 2 days 100 kilometers away, I had 2 days where I was just used to going at a certain pace that. But I don't think it feels like I was just so proud of myself. I feel like once I'd done the plain section where there was just roadhouses, then I felt like I have this in the bag. I have the comfort of having bike stores and amenities and things like that. So
Amazing.
yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but that's the truth.
No, that's a great, honest answer. Are there any other questions before? Oh, Scott.
There's some conversation. I think that the nice thing is that you meet other people that are doing other trips, and I feel like it's good for me mentally every few years to kind of just stretch my legs and be reminded of, you know, these sort of things and have an adventure. But I think it has to be done in tandem with the family, and for them to experience just the generosity and kindness of others, and to feel their warmth, and to know that you can do stuff like big stuff, ambitious stuff. And there's some conversations about what that looks like, because I also know that I will be wanting to do a certain pace and a certain style that's not necessarily good for the group. And so how do I work and get that out of my system so I don't destroy them or they don't hate on me? But yeah, I think that there's lots of, and the nice thing is even on this trip, there's lots of things that, like there's established trails with huts that allows you to don't have to bring a tent, and makes things easier for a family. But I think the next trip would involve them for sure, just to see just the pace of life, the difference of life, the together of life. And unless you kind of doing it yourself, it's really hard to really fully appreciate all the ups and downs and everything in between. But it is something special that kind of brings you together. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Roland. Wow. I'm so inspired by that. The part of your story that's sticking with me is just that piece around going through the hardship and the suffering, and then your experience of the goodness and the welcome of people and their kindness in like afterward, and how that felt and how it humbled you. And it just reminded me of experiences in my own story where I've had that contrast, and like it's almost like the beauty is perceived in the contrast. And thank you so much for sharing that.